Hi, and welcome to one of my first science videos. Now, I've always wanted to make a science video because I've always been into science. I always, as a child, I've looked up into the sky and just think, wow, And I've spent about 4 or 5 years now just learning the concept of the cosmos and the solar system and physiologically enlightenment and intensity from spaceward and onwards. Now I think I've learned quite a lot, so I'm making this YouTube video now to actually just teach you guys something. I want to actually be a little bit creational, productive, maybe educational as well on my YouTube account. So this video is going to teach you how stars are actually formed. Now everyone may think that stars are formed by hydrogen and helium, which are gases. That's actually not completely correct. Stars are formed by such things as water. In fact, it'd be better if I just explain to you how it's made. You'll get the gist of it. Now, what actually happens is, for a star to actually be created out of basically nothing, the sun has to be in its hottest season. Now, for the sun to be in its hottest season, that is when the sun's sunspots can be visible from when you're staring at it from a digital camera, perhaps. Now, when that happens, everyone knows the sun's rays are actually hotter than the sun's surface. Now, the sun rays, it swoops down, comes right down and hits Earth from the biggest force that it can actually have. And when it hits the water, it releases this. It's not a toxic gas, but it can be pretty deadly to humans. The water releases this gas that just rises from it. Have you ever came across maybe a lake or a puddle perhaps or something, and you see it's kind of like it has that smoking fog effect that comes out of it? That's what I'm talking about. What happens is this rises from the water, and what happens is when it's 10 degrees from absolute zero, these gases form into chunks and create almost like a solid. It's not actually a solid, it looks a lot like a solid, but it's a lot like mercury. Once you heat it up, it turns to a liquid, but once it's cold, it's a solid. So what happens is it makes into a solid and it falls into the water. Now, most people will probably think that's a stone or that's a rock. You're mistaken for that. That is not a stone or a rock. That's actually intergalactic nebulon corrosive compounds. Now, what happens now is when it's dark and it starts to get a lot colder, the sun's away, that's the sun played its part now. The sun's came down, formed this gas into like a chunky solid, right? Well, what happens now is it goes dark. Now these stones they feed off the coldness, so they rise up into the air, almost like a levitating device of some sort. And what happens is it just slowly rises. It rises into the sky. Okay, now people might think that's a UFO, and that's where I think people are getting these alien fucking conspiracies from. I don't believe it. I just know that it's just other stars getting created. Now, before I go any further, you might say, hey Dean, how come some nights there are not any stars and some nights there's like hundreds? Well, the simple matter of the fact there is, when you don't see any stars in the cosmos, that means it's simply not cold enough for these rock compounds to actually float into the air. Now, when it is a little bit cold, you'll notice that when you're out and you see the stars and the cosmos and the solar system, it's absolutely beautiful, but it is giving you a bit of a chill. Now, what happens now is once the stars reach up into our atmosphere, what happens is, this is where the gases do come in, okay? You might have heard me say hydrogen and helium earlier on. What happens is the hydrogen starts to give it resource. It just feeds. It feeds off the hydrogen in our atmosphere, and when it's got too much hydrogen, it gives off helium. Now, when the helium starts coming out of these rock compounds, the sun comes back into play. The sun's heat ignites the helium, which creates the star's bright, sensational, beautiful display. Now, what happens is, once loads of these stars actually come together, like you may notice, like, oh, that star up there is quite close together to the other one. What actually happens then is they conjoin. Okay, there's a star here, star there. It just floats in our atmosphere and starts to conjoin into one. Now, when all these stars start to conjoin, like just loads, just like that, shooting stars. There's a big star, shooting star, whoosh, boom, making it that. That is actually how the sun is created. Just loads of compound rocks forming together to make a beautiful big star. Now, we all know the bigger the rock compound, the more resources it's going to have to take to feed itself and to make it brighter. Now, that is where all the you know, when you go up on top of a mountain, the air thins out. Well, that's the star taking resource from Mother Earth. It's taking it all to give itself hydrogen, atmosphere. Now, we all know stars are living things, and it needs water to survive. Everything needs water. Everything that is living, it needs some sort of water. So what happens is the stars sucks the atmosphere, and it starts to drink the water from our Earth, and that is just what makes it such a delicate process. And that is actually why we choke when we're that high up at that altitude. Thanks for watching. I'm Dean. Have a good day.